Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinnādana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kāmesu micchāchara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musāvāda veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Surameraya majjapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now let us prepare ourselves to do a short sitting on the breath. For those of you who are new, first thing is check your posture. Make sure you're sitting as comfortably as you can. Relax, balance. This is especially important when you're doing it on your own. Put your palms together in a comfortable way, and head upright slightly, tilted forward. Line of sight, your vision looking down 45 degrees. It's best to close your eyes to avoid distractions. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, you can half open and look down 45 degrees so that you're not distracted. If you keep your eyes open and you see things around you, then just reflect, seeing. Note as seeing. Whatever you see is just seeing. Don't say seeing what, okay? We'll be studying about this later. Just say seeing. If you hear sound, just say sound. Or hearing. So that's mental noting. Keep your breath normal. Don't do anything to it. Keep it relaxed, like baby breaths. For most people, it's easier to start by counting. So if it works for you, you start with counting. There are 3 or 4 methods of counting at least. So choose the one that works best for you. I'm going to teach you one of them. Breathe in, breathe out. 1. In, out. 2. In, out. 3. In, out. 4. In, out. 5. 1 to 5. 1 to 5. Now you can count up to 10 if you like, but keep to the same number during each sitting. Don't go beyond 10, it's too big. Don't go smaller than 5, it's too small. So stage 1, count your breaths and smile. If you make any mistakes, it's all right. Just go back to 1 again. Keep your mind focused on your breath, counting 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. Count and then smile. In, out, 1, smile. In, out, 2, smile, like that. Whenever you notice there are distractions, just smile at the distractions. They will normally go away. If the distraction doesn't go away, then you can note. For example, thinking, or sound, smile. Then go back to your meditation, go back to the breath. Now, if you do not like the counting, or you find the counting doesn't work, it's quite normal for some people, then you can straight away go to stage 2. In stage 2, we watch the breath in and out. Stage 2, the code word or short name is in, out. Your breath has come in, note it as in. Your breath has gone out, note it as out. In, out, in, out. After the breath, don't guide the breath, don't force the breath. Then your breath will slow down, more relaxed and peaceful. Remember to smile. In, out, smile. In, out, smile. If you like, you can also do in, smile, out, smile. The idea of breath meditation is just to relax, to renounce all thoughts. Direct the mind to the breath. So if you do this properly, your breathing will slow down. You need to notice the spaces between the in and out becoming longer, more peaceful, even joyful. These 2 stages are easy to do, and these are the 2 you should be focusing on. Keep on doing them. When you do, especially stage 2 properly, your breath starts slowing down. And you notice the space getting bigger, getting longer, then you can switch to the 3rd stage. The 3rd stage is called spaces. So you breathe in, In, and then there is a space. There's a growing space. Smile at it. And then out. Smile. Then notice, feel the space again by smiling at it. Space, smiling at it. Feel the peacefulness of the space. The spaces are not uniform. They are not regular. Sometimes long, sometimes short. So it doesn't matter. Just feel peacefulness, the joy of the spaces. Here I'm only guiding you, so the sitting is very short. On your own, sit as long as you like, as long as you can. After a while, when you do this properly, you will notice everything is so peaceful. You don't feel like saying anything. In fact, even any effort to say something can be distracting. You notice this, then you're ready for stage 4, silence. Silent stage. No need to do anything. Don't say anything. Only watch, simply watch the breath just as it is, feeling the peace, feeling the joy, smiling. Whenever you feel like it, just smile. Especially when you notice some thoughts coming, you notice the concentration a bit weakening, just smile. Or you can gently whisper, peaceful, peaceful, smile. Let the peace pervade your whole body. As you do this, recharging yourself, you're calming down, the blood pressure is going down, heart rate going down. If you reach this last stage, stage 4, stay with it as long as you can, but don't force it. Sometimes you can sit for a very long time. Sometimes just a short while, doesn't matter. At this point, we review our practice. That means you notice how you meditated. Remember the peaceful moments, the joyful moments. This memory will help you in your future meditations or whenever you need inner peace. Remember the peacefulness, the joy. Also, if you notice there are distractions or difficulties you had, try to recall what happened. Make a note so that you are more prepared the next time to prevent or to correct such distractions. This is what we do during the review. And now, come to the end of the sitting, we gently open our eyes. Just sit. This is called just sitting. Quietly for a short while. We begin our meditation slowly, gently. We end it also slowly, gently. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, that's good. Now we go on with our talking. All right, here we go. So today we're going to look at something really fascinating. The fifth aggregate, which is of course the most difficult of them all. Even today, the experts are not sure what consciousness is. So this is also the 10th lesson, how time flies. Eh? So it looks like, you know, we have been extending, we've been expanding and extending this study. So it's going to spill over to 2022, because many of the parts we extended into 2 parts, 3 parts. Like, for example, consciousness, I think there'll be 3 parts at least, because there's a lot to know. But I must tell you, even after all that I've said, you still have to, you know, think about it and reflect on all these things by yourself. No? So let's, especially the new people, let us have a quick look at what we have studied so far. Connect to my screen, but okay, that's good. So first of all, we have a body. We know we have a body, right? So the fact that we know we have a body, the knowing is our mind. So these 2 things we know for sure they exist. And what is our body? We reflect as made up of solid aspects we call earth. The Buddha was talking 2,500 years ago. He's using all this for meditation. So he used the metaphor, a kind of figure of speech, earth, not just the ground. It means something solid. Okay. In the suttas, we must always remember there is this kind of language, okay, figurative language, which it represents something. It's not it, but it points to something, right? So these are solid parts which we did study a bit of it previously. Remember, defined as head hair, body hair, nail, teeth, skin, for example. And then we have most of our body is liquid water. Again, water is not just H2O, it's any kind of fluid. Our body is as blood, sweat, tears, urine, and so on. Then we have fire, that's the heat element, the decaying, the decomposition, the metabolism, and so on. All this going on right from day one. Okay, we are decaying. And now at my age, we decay faster still even. So this fire is the fire that decays, or the part of it that decays. The wind here, again, is a metaphor. It refers to movement, the air we take in, the air we give out, and also the movements of our internal organs. If we take food, it goes down through our gullet, through our alimentary canal, the peristalsis, pushing down the food into the stomach, and then when the stomach digests the food, it becomes dung becomes waste material. It is by peristalsis, it goes out the other way, right? So all these are called wind, okay? So notice these four elements are not just things, they're actually processes, they intermingle, they don't exist by themselves, they are all the time mixed up together, working together. Now the mind is made out of feeling, right? We have done feelings like so long ago, if you remember. And then there is perception. Like feeling is how we respond to the sense objects, to our experiences. And then we do that through recognizing the objects from our past experiences, and that's called perception. And then normally we should not, but we often do this. We decide we like it, we don't like it, and we have emotions, and this is under formations. When these are karmic reactions, we create karma. Okay, so here we see then all this happens on the stage of consciousness, the fifth of the five aggregates, which we are talking about today. So you see this consciousness linking up body and mind, right? Our body is the conscious body, so it's working with the five physical senses and the mind. So you have six senses and so on, right? So you can, if you look at by way of senses, the body will be the five physical senses, and the mind is the sixth sense. So there are different ways of looking at our being. Okay, so this is the famous five aggregates teaching. Okay. Now, so we come to this topic of today. That is the fifth aggregate. What is consciousness, right? So this is the biggest question in modern psychology, even science. Okay, it cuts through a lot of disciplines. We often use the word mind, all right? So, but mind and consciousness, they do have different nuances, very important differences, especially in early Buddhism. Notice here, the chart says that consciousness is the central activity of the mind, the key activity, the main activity of the mind. So you will be correct if you say the mind is consciousness, okay? But you may not be correct to say consciousness is the mind. So it's a bit tricky here. So at the start, let me remind you that when you study the early Buddhist texts, it's very important to keep an open mind. There are very few technical terms in early Buddhism. Now we are so used to the idea of technical terms, which has its benefits. It is important we define our terms, yes. So when something is defined and the definition is kept intact, we call it technical. In other words, it has only one sense. But that's not the way many of these words, especially describing the mind, works. Because there are many overlapping parts of the mind, okay? So imagine the Buddha is describing his mind, something which is mental, he's putting into words. No words can replace the mind. So this is the problem, see? But by the very action of putting his thoughts into words, we are able to look at it, so to speak. We can study it, and then we can build up our understanding of it. Now we understand this, that these are like fingers pointing to the moon. They are fingers, but they're not the moon. See? So then we'll be fine. So this also is to apply the idea of non-self. Words do not have essential meanings. Words do not really have their own meanings. We give meanings to those words, and those meanings change over time. And sometimes even within a lifetime, the word can change, or we can use the words in different ways, especially in poetry, for example. Right? So we must be aware of all this. So we come back here and say, okay, consciousness is the central activity of the mind with that kind of understanding. Now, consciousness can be examined just as in the way we started our study of the five aggregates by asking some basic question. Am I conscious now? Ask yourself this, am I conscious now? Now, if you sit quietly, you were meditating a while ago, you notice one of the first things, like for me, I can hear my clock ticking here, right? And you probably can hear people in the house or neighbors and so on. So we are conscious through our 5 physical senses. We see, we're conscious of seeing. We are conscious of sound, that's called hearing. We are conscious of smell, smelling. We taste food and we have different kinds of tastes. And then we can feel warmth and cold. We hold someone's hand and we feel good or we don't feel good, right? So touch. And of course, in early Buddhism, thinking also is part of it. We become conscious of our thoughts. But thinking is a very special aspect. This is a very special sense. It is what makes sense of all the other 5 physical senses. Okay, so that much I'll say for the moment. I will talk more about this later. So we know we are conscious. We can sense things through our physical senses. You know that, right? I don't think anyone will disagree and say, no, I'm not conscious now. That would be the self-contradiction. You won't be talking if you're not conscious, for example, right? So this is the way early Buddhism works. We start with basic, probable, empirical truths, things we can experience. Right. So now there is this one leading mind scientist, more of a philosopher of the mind, Daniel C. Dennett. He says in one of his writings, human consciousness is just about the last surviving mystery. So there's something, frontier of knowledge. We're still not sure what consciousness is. In a way, the scholars love it. You know, of course, everything is known. There'll be nothing new to learn. You know, so we'll be learning the same old things every time. So the scholars are very excited about this, and they're very excited about what early Buddhism, what the Buddha has to teach us about the nature of the mind and consciousness. Another scholar, Sue Hamilton, has written a number of books on the 5 aggregates. She specializes on the 5 aggregates, and there are 2 books she has written on the 5 aggregates from a Western scholar's point of view. She says, because one of the most fundamental characteristics of human beings is that they are conscious, this makes it a particularly important term in the analysis of the human being. Right? So this is again obvious, the mind. So this is something wonderful about early Buddhism. I specify early Buddhism because it's the most direct and focused teaching on the mind. And the vocabulary is very clear and very simple. There are examples, suttas, and so on. Okay. Yet, it's not that simple because the context of consciousness or viññāṇa in Pali, the context of viññāṇa in the suttas is not always at once clear. The more you look at it, it's not that clear. You have to look at it, think about it, compare notes, and so on. And then also reflect about it. And over time, you will change your opinion about this. In other words, you begin to understand it better and deeper. So here, it's not always at once clear to the modern reader who is not a practitioner. So the Buddha teaches all these things on the mind, not for psychology, because there was no such discipline in the Buddha's time. He was teaching this as part of his training to us so that we understand how we create views and how we are shaped by our views, how we are distracted by our views, and how we suffer because of our views. So one way to understand this is to understand the source of it all, the mind and consciousness. So this is the purpose we're studying all this, the 5 aggregates. So let's look at the keyword now, viññāṇa. What does it mean? Okay, so you can see, you want to read more, the main text is 17.8a. Okay, yeah, and then this is the chapter 114, 8 to 6 sections of chapter, right? So when you look at viññāṇa, It is in Pali, by the way. Sanskrit is viññāṇa, viññāṇa. Okay. Then we resolve the compound, we break it up, analyze it, look at its etymology. Pali words have a prefix, and then you have the main word, the stem, the root, and there are infixes and so on. So here you see this. Try my mouse. Okay, the we here refers to the prefix. It's very similar to English bi, like bisect, to cut into two. All right. Then jnana means knowledge. Jnana. Okay. Jnana is knowledge. Then you have an insert, extra n here, so that there's a flow in the pronunciation. Viññāṇa. All right. It's just Pali Sandhi, as we call it. So here, we is what's called a disjunctive prefix. Disjunctive, that means it's separate things, analytical, right? So our consciousness first decides what kind of experience is it, all right? You notice when you wake up, so this is very interesting. The next time you wake up, or try to recall when you wake up, what happens? This experience of waking up. Especially when you are in a new place, you've traveled to a new place, and there's the first day you woke up in a hotel or somewhere, and then the first thing is to say, am I hearing things? Am I seeing something? You have to decide which of the sense is working, or smelling, or tasting is not usually the case. Even now, you know, like now you say, okay, which sense is working, right? You're listening to me, you're seeing me. So the mind has to decide which of the five senses, or even the sixth sense. Oh, I'm imagining this, right? So the mind has to decide which of the senses are we dealing with. So that's the meaning of disjunctive here, or particularize. The mind has to decide which one. It has to break it up. Which one are we thinking now? Okay, and that lets us know what's going on. Okay, so jnana comes from the root janya. So this is Sanskrit root janya, to know. Now this janya is very interesting because when it migrates to the West, because many of the Western languages like Greek, Italian, and English, German, French, and so on, the what are called the Romance languages of Western Europe, they have the same family called the Indo-European family. So this J, Ñ, A migrated to the West into, I think it is Greek, yeah? You get GN, okay? Or even, for example, breath is prana, okay? So if you look at, there is this word pneumatic tires. It's spelled P-N-E-U-M-A-T-I-C, pneumatic, P-N-E-U, the P is silent. As a child, I often wondered, I said, how come this P is silent, right? Because it comes from prana. Prana means breath, but in Sanskrit, the P is pronounced. But when it goes to the West, the P is silent. And here again, you have J and A. When it migrated to the West, becomes G and A. G and A. You get words like gnosis, G-N-O-S-I-S. Gnosis means knowledge, right? So this G-N comes from the same root here, and gnosis is the direct translation of jnana. But we don't normally use gnosis because it has a very specific meaning, so the meaning has changed over time. But essentially, they come from the same root. So this is an interesting point about languages, okay? So this is how viññāṇa is formed. You have the prefix, you have the keyword, stem, if you like. Jnana is the stem or the keyword. So now we have jnana. So another word ending in nya. See, notice. So saññā, right? But here is a feminine. The nya ending with a macron over the a. Sanskrit is saññā. Now, the Sanskrit gives you a good idea how it is formed, see? Now you see saññā there, this is the root, meaning knowledge, and then saṅ, like English common. Right? So here you break it up, is what you get. So saṅ here is kind of opposite of we. Saṅ is to bring together, conjunctive prefix. It brings things together. So when we perceive things, we bring ideas together. We bring the past into the present. Okay, so it's conjunctive. It puts together, it makes us things up. So it's a conjunctive prefix plus jnana, to know. So we know by bringing something from the past into the present, and then we recognize this present event. Okay. Whereas viññāṇa, we break up what is we are experiencing now into parts. We say, oh, I'm seeing this, or I'm hearing this, or I'm smelling this, and so on. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Then the verb, okay, the verb for saññā, perception, is saññāti, all right? Saññāti. Now here it is basically saṅ, but before the J, it becomes ña, so easier to pronounce. These are called family of sounds, saññāti, right? Yeah, saṅ plus janati. But in Sanskrit, you see the form quite clear there. To put together and know something, or know something by putting together ideas. So we have cognates in English. Cognates means, here again, this word cognate is very interesting. Although we pronounce as cognate, but actually it's broken up into co meaning together, and then nate, G-N-A-T-E. Nate means to arise, to be born. They were born together, they were started together. This word originated together, cognates. In other words, they have the same sense, they overlap between two languages. So here we say the English cognate is cognize, all right? English cognate of saññāti is cognize. Of course, you can say we translate it as cognize. Now, how do you get cognize, right? So you have com plus nocere, okay? Nocere is to know. So when you join together, the M disappears, you get cognize. Okay, this is English. It becomes English, so it becomes smoother, cognize, to know, right? And then the word conscious in adjective, you get a plus com again, but there's an S here, so the M becomes N. If you pronounce it, you notice your tongue was smoothly move from one spot to another. Whereas we say com S, and then the jump, the space to jump is bigger. But conscious N and S are easier to pronounce, smoother. So conscious comes from to know by putting things together. I guess. Anyway, that is Latin and Greek. Okay. And this saññā is perception as a sense faculty. So saññā, you have sense faculty plus sense object plus sense consciousness. This is a triangle of experience. You remember in the earlier talk, probably a second or third talk, I talk about how we sense things, how we perceive things. First, you have the sense faculty, takes, for example, the eye, and then your sense object, something visual object outside, and then there is this awareness of it. All right. There is this awareness, and when all the three come together, feeling arises. Okay, so the verb is saññāti, which means recognizes. Of course, normally when we translate saññāti as perceive, but the action, the meaning is to recognize. Or we form an idea by recalling the past. We form ideas, or we recall the past. So there you are. This is a difference between consciousness and perception. Consciousness is more dealing with the present, as saññā or perception brings the past and projects it onto the present. Now, let's go a little bit deeper into how the mind works. Mental activity. Types of mental activity. Okay, so we have we already looked at saññā, perception. perception. Saññā notes things, saññāti, or recognizes things. It perceives colors, differentiates colors. Okay, we know colors because we have seen the color before, and then we look at it and say, oh, okay, that's red, that's blue, and so on. Okay, so that's how perception works. If you get a child who's never seen, who's never told the names of color before, the child that cannot recognize the color, or even foreigners, you know, there are some cultures whose range of colors are more limited. And there are some cultures like the artists of France and Italy, the idea of color is even more detailed and subtle than ours. They will tell you the shade of red or blue, and there's so many names, different names for it, which we're not even aware of, and we don't even notice. So that's perception. So then there is feeling. When we talk about aggregates, remember there is perception and there's feeling. Feeling, the verb is vedeti, to feel. And we talk about three feelings: pleasant, painful, neutral. Actually, in Pali, they don't use the word neutral. They use neither pleasant, neither painful nor pleasant. Neither not painful, not pleasant. All right. So notice here again, in early Buddhist psychology, neutral feeling is regarded as a feeling for the sake of understanding the nature and range of feeling. Then we have the third mental aggregate is saṅkhāra. Saṅkhāra formations. Here, the saṅkhāra constructs. Notice the word construct, there is con there, and then you have sang in the Pali. Very similar. Kara actually comes with the same root as karma, no? Meaning to construct. So the verb is abhisaṅkharoti. So it's a bit longer, no? Abhisaṅkharoti, to construct. But abhisaṅkharoti means actually is to create karma. Okay, so literally it means to construct karma. But we would, in English, we would say create karma. Okay, so this is some of the keywords or vocabulary we can learn in terms of the 5 aggregates. And then, of course, you have viññāṇa, consciousness. And the verb is cognize, vijjanati. Right, so here you can see the nouns of the 4 mental aggregates and their verbs. And here, viññāṇa, of course, gives us the 6 kinds of experiences. That is through the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and of course the mind. So these are the types of mental activity. These are all mental activities that occur in us as human beings. Now we look a little deeper and we look at the levels of mental activity. Okay, so here again you can look up the details in volume 17.8a, section 113, and 17.6 also, 8.4.2, and the following. F means in the following, that means 0.3. So here's the famous iceberg diagram. Some of you have seen it before. So notice in an iceberg, most of it is underwater, and this is the part above water, so to speak. This is our conscious being, if you like, our conscious person, conscious part. This is our public image, our body and speech. We express ourselves to others through body and speech. And on this level, the part of the mind that functions is called mano. Okay, now we're beginning to see the different words for different mental activities. No? Now, I'd like to point out one more important thing here. Notice on this level, on the public level of our being, when we communicate with people, our public image, the conscious image, if you like, what people are conscious of when they look at us, is through our body and speech. And very often, what we do and what we say don't really reflect what's inside our mind. Generally, it's okay because we don't hurt people and things to get done. But very often, things go overboard. For example, when our actions become violent and people get hurt, or when we take things away from others, or we deprive others of their freedom, or we don't tell the truth and our minds get confused and so on. That is why there are the 5 precepts. So if we look at the 5 precepts, we find the 5 precepts help us to restrain our 5 senses. It's like we have 5 horses and we have to hold them back so that we move properly in the right direction. So precept 1, 2, 3 concerns the body. They are body-based precepts. They are actions or karma of the body: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. And the 4th precept against lying, falsehood, is speech, right? Okay, here there's only 1 precept, but actually it represents 3 others too, the 4 right speeches. Then to avoid rough speech, use what's called frivolous talk, and slander, right? So this come under the 4th precept. Then the 5th precept actually has to do with the mind. The 5th precept sort of, we train ourselves, the 5th precept, to make sure that the lower parts of the iceberg doesn't intrude into our life in a negative way, right? So we have to keep our minds clear so that the mind can be calm. So that's the working of the 5 precepts. So this is our conscious, our public aspect. We show very little of this really, but that's all people know. So imagine, when you say, I know someone, that's all you know, this top part, So we don't really know. On the other hand, as you begin to know a person better, then you begin to see, or you get glimpses of what is below the waterline, as we say it, okay? Normally, of course, good teachers, wise teachers, they will see this. They will know us better as they train us, as they talk to us, as they listen to us. So this is the top part of the iceberg. Now we have karma bouncing in. So when we act to our body and speech, we create karma. Okay. Now the thing is this: as long as you have greed, hate, delusion, as long as you act out of greed, out of hate, out of delusion, it is karma, whether you're conscious of it or not. This is the thing we have to consider. Karma is something habitual. Very often we don't even know what we are doing, and the consequences are still there. Now, even in law, if you're a lawyer, you are told ignorance of the law is no excuse, right? Because the law still works, so to speak. Yes. So karma is something like that. So here, when we act, we create karma. But before we act, there is a part of our mind called the preconscious. You will notice, right? For example, before wanting to join this class, there is this internal dialogue, a private dialogue. Should I go for this? How should I go for this? How will I find the time for this? What will I gain for this? Things like that. So there's a lot of dialogues going in, and you start talking to yourself, say, oh, I want to go for this, it's very good, and so on, and you tell why it's good. So there's this thought going on. So you see here, the red colored was thought, right? So this is the predominant word here. So you have body and speech on the conscious external level. Then on the pre-conscious level, you have this thinking. People do not know our thinking, but we may, if we are focused, notice what we are thinking. And this happens on the pre-conscious level. This is the one that we do not show the public, but we know what's going on inside us. And this is the one that is usually motivated by greed, hate, or delusion, usually. All right. Of course, if you study Buddhism more, you have the opposite of greed, hate, delusion. So you have charity, or generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom working for you. But that's not always the case, because very often there are very powerful darker forces from deep down below the icebergs, pushing you, goading you, making you act. And you have no control over this. This is the problem. This is why we want to study Buddhism, why we want to strengthen our mind, not to allow this lower, darker powers to take over our lives. So anyway, let's look at this level a bit more. So this level is called Chitta, all right? This level, the pre-conscious, a bit more, we can train ourselves in this. We know what's going on, and if we have the proper training and skill and patience, wisdom, we can correct things. We can change greed into generosity. We can change hate into love. We can change delusion into wisdom. So this is Chitta. So Chitta is the good guy, if you like. Mano is the general mind that acts and reacts. Okay, where Chitta is the one that watches and study. So these are two basic ideas to keep in mind. And we go a little further. Now we go deeper into the unconscious. Notice the sequence. The topmost, you have conscious, pre-conscious, unconscious. Okay. So unconscious are there all the time, and we don't even know it's there. Okay. The Pali word is anusaya. Anusaya means it sleeps. It is something lurking, lying down there. At the right time, it will lurk. It will show its head and just tell you what to do. So these are the latent tendencies. They have accumulated through many, many lives from the past, or even in this life itself, from our childhood days. We have been conditioned in a certain way. We've been taught certain things, and these are very powerful things, and very hard to know. But if you study Buddhism, you study suttas carefully, you do some meditation, and your spiritual friendship, where the teacher helps you to see your deeper side, it's frightening, and sometimes you just want to run away. You do not want to see all these things because you don't like them. See? So this is the unconscious, very scary, very dark. There is this famous German philosopher called Nietzsche. He says something like, if you stare into the darkness long enough, the darkness will stare back. That was this unconscious. They have this great power to overwhelm us. Okay, but we need to master them with the right conditions. The right conditions are very important. You cannot just go there and look at them. You'll be drowned by them. Now, we go a little deeper. We have a fourth level, actually, but there's no line there because this, you can see an egg there. Ratna put an egg for me there. So this last part is part of the unconscious, actually. It's called the subconscious. So there's, you have four terms now. Conscious, pre-conscious, unconscious, subconscious. The subconscious here refers, is what takes over when you're sleeping. When we are sleeping, all the five senses have shut down, and the mind is at rest. But there's a part of the mind that keeps us going, and that's called the subconscious, according to early Buddhism. That's what keeps us alive, so to speak. Remember, when we are sleeping, we are not conscious. Or when we faint, or we are put under anesthesia and we become unconscious, this subconscious is still there, keeping us alive. So you can use another big word, existential consciousness, if you like. But existential consciousness has another meaning, which we'll talk about a little later, because we're still going to look at these key terms after the break, okay? So here, we're looking at this third level, which is filled with unconscious, subconscious, and this subconscious is what is reborn. They're like karmic genes, which move on from life to life. But they are not the self, it's not the soul. It's just like genes, you know, when you talk about genes, it's something to tell you, oh, these are not fixed things really. Yes, they are the elements, you can talk about them, but they're not really fixed things. So, we can generally call this third level as viññāṇa, broadly as consciousness. Now, you notice even at this point, you already tell yourself, wow, if you use consciousness to describe the last part, then what about the other parts? Yes, you're right. Because consciousness is one word which has got so many meanings. So you got to get used to this idea. What is the context? What do we mean by this word? So in this diagram, you see viññāṇa referring to the lower, the dark aspects of our consciousness. Chitta is used to describe the pre-conscious. Mano is to describe our conscious mind. Okay. Now this is my understanding after decades of studying Buddhism. You find there are other specialists describing these very difficult, three difficult words, and you find variations. So you be ready for this. So my advice is study this. You may not get all the answers right away, but these are some grounding we have to start with. So over time, as you read the suttas, as you do your meditation, as you reflect on what you know, you begin to put the pieces together, they become clearer. And if you are a psychologist, you're a mind scientist, and you study all these things, you find all this information very useful. In fact, now the medical faculty in the US has invited me to next year to, discuss with them the nature of the mind, because they are also interested in this, because even as doctors, they now need to know how the mind operates, especially from the Buddhist point of view, and then they try to understand as scientists, as doctors, what all this mean. So that's, I think, covers this iceberg. Right, so you can just stop here for a while for a break, and we'll come back in 5 minutes time. Now let's look at this useful table on the three words for the mind. Chitta, mano, viññāṇa. Now, whenever you're lost, just basically remember chitta. We can hopefully translate as thought, mano as mind, viññāṇa as consciousness. All right. Now, mano is famously found in the first two verses of Dhammapada, if you remember. Right. So normally we translate mano as mind. In fact, the word mano, from the word man, you get mental, right? Notice very close, no? Okay, so, and then viññāṇa, of course, is a broad term for consciousness. The efforts by scholars trying to be exact, they want to translate consciousness to something else. I don't think it's very helpful. We can never find exact translations for words like this. So we have to settle for the closest, and then we have to define it. We have to kind of mentally adjust ourselves and say, okay, this is what it means. So let us look at Chitta again. Chitta is the pre-conscious thought. I have capital letters, thought. These are the thoughts that we have before we act, and this is on the pre-conscious level. And this is the knower, which we more or less try to know before we act. And this is also our intention. So this is makes it be like karma. Okay. So this is the first. We're going to look at the diagram on the across the three columns first, right? So we read across the three columns first. So on the first level, we have something we can say to be active, something active and external. That is the chitta as our pre-conscious thought. And basically this refers to our decisions before we act. And usually we do not express this before others. But remember, we do all this deliberately, but not necessarily consciously or knowingly, but deliberately. In other words, they're rooted in greed, hate, or delusion. The intention is still there. So we have to understand this definition of intention. And this is habit forming. Karma is habit forming. We become our karma. The old school or traditional Buddhist, we often have a narrow idea of karma. We think that karma is simply you do good, you get good, and the more you give, the more you get. Consequentialist. Yeah? It's not simple as that. In fact, it's not a very good idea of karma. Okay, so the idea is we have to train ourselves. Karma is virtue ethics. We have to train ourselves that we become better people, wholesome people, and head towards the path so that we become enlightened in due course. Now, on this first level, if we compare Chitta with Mano, Chitta is unconscious in the sense that it is the karmic door, the doer, the latent tendencies that work on us, okay? And these are the result of past karma. Past karma act on us, make us decide to do this, to do that, on the pre-conscious level. And then, of course, you have the third aspect is what is conscious in us, or consciousness in general. And this is how we experience things. For example, through the eye, the ear, nose, tongue, body, and of course the mind. And whatever we experience here fits back into our latent tendencies. It goes in a cycle. We tend to look for experiences we like, push away things we don't like. That's how we form views, you know. That's how we look for teachers when we are as Buddhists. We're not looking for Buddhism. We're looking for teachers and teachings that agree with us, right? For example, the last few days, someone told me, oh, why can't we change Buddhism? Why don't we change Buddhism, you know? So that is, of course, a very strange suggestion, right? It's like, you know, we want the Buddha to revise his teachings, revise the Four Truth, revise the 5 Precepts, and so on. So we should not do that. Instead, we should be changing ourselves. We should be Buddhisms to help us understand who we are, how we are, what we are, and from there to refine our understanding so that we help ourselves to become happier people. So here, on a deeper, less active or conscious level, we see what influences our decision coming from the unconscious mind, from Mano. This is the shadowy doer, if you like, the busybody controller, the latent tendencies, the anusaya, which is this deep reservoir of past karma or karmic genes, if you like. Don't take the term too technically, just an idea which seems to help us understand how these things work. Karmic genes, and this is the energy, if you like, that directs our being and our lives. Now, when we speak of having no free will, I sometimes hear people, teachers and philosophers telling us we really don't have we have no free will. We're actually referring to this level, okay, where we only experience things. We have no control over how we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch, really. The latent tendency already decided how we should see, what we should see, where we should look, what we should look for. So we go around looking for teachers, and then we look at this teacher, we like this teacher. We say it's very handsome, meaning handsome means he looks like someone we like. And he's very wise because he teaches something that we like, that we understand. And we think he's very kind because he listens to us, and every time he says yes to whatever we say. Okay, so this is how we react to teachers, no? And then let's go on to the next level. So now let's look at Chitta. Here on the second, less active level, you have a bit of internal level here. So Chitta here is the heart of our human experience. Now this is the good part, because this Chitta knows things, and it knows, okay, I'm seeing something, hearing something, smelling something, whatever, and we understand better, all right? So here you have the two aspects, subhuman and human, okay? Very often, in the crowd especially, you have this subhuman nature coming up. The asura, very violent, exploitative, and the animal, ignorant, not wanting to learn, and then the preta, addicted to things, they keep on accumulating things, and then the hell being, who is very violent, who just wants to destroy things, right? So, on the positive side, okay, so this is actually the Chitta side. On the human side here, or Chitta side, we express love, ruth or compassion, joy, and peace. These are the 4 Brahma Viharas. We cultivate these positive emotions. So if we have a strong citta, we have these positive emotions, and then we continue to learn from our experience, right? So this is where our emotions become more positive, so to speak. So this is one way of looking at the nature of citta here. Citta can learn, it becomes positive, right? It makes us more human. And then further, if you look at on the mano side, this consciousness also becomes the roots of our beings, because we have emotions, and these emotions can be very strong. It can make us subhuman and make us human. So this is where, if we are an artist, meaning we try to see or create beauty, right, through seeing, like the painter, he creates beautiful pictures, or a photographer. We create beauty through sound, the musician, the singer. Of course, then we create beauty through smell, right? The one who makes perfumes, and to taste, the chef, the cooks, our parents and our people, the people who cook for us, you know? And to touch is making us live in a comfortable place, giving us shelter, and of course showing us love, right? And then thinking, of course, the philosophers, the teachers who make us happy. So these are the people who enrich our lives through the senses. So in a sense, they are like the capital A artists. They try to make humans of us, and we try to make humans of others by acting in this way, which is really wonderful. So this is, we can act there, but then of course there will be more of citta acting. So you notice, even as I talk now, mano and citta overlapping. So you got to get used to this kind of idea, all right? And then the 3rd column, you have consciousness, shows here how this level, how our thoughts are constructed. We actually create, we construct our experience. We put together things that we already know in the past to understand what we're experiencing here right now. Even as I'm talking now, you're listening to me, see? So you try to understand what I'm saying from what you know before. And you say, oh, Piya is talking something different from what I knew before. Why can't you talk like this? Why don't you think like that? So you find you're always trying to compare what you knew before with what I'm telling you now. In fact, you can use all these challenges to your thinking, if you like, and then see, okay, where can I clear or improve my thinking? So that will be to your advantage, right? So here, this consciousness also color our feelings, right? Decide on how our feelings should be, and so on. So here, psychologically, then all our conscious activities included here, we create this virtual reality, this world of sound, smell, sight, sound, smell, taste, touches around us, and then we feel this world the way we like it or we don't like it, and so on. So this is the kind of world we create, virtual world we create for ourselves. Now on the 3rd level, these are just ideas, okay? They're not actual levels. I organize the definition of these difficult 3 difficult terms. On this very more general, broad level, theoretical level, we can see citta or thought as the subject of thinking and feeling. Thinking and feeling overlap here, okay? So this is the part that we need to know, that we can train, and that we can free, okay? In this connection, we can use a modern term and call this cognitive consciousness. Now remember, cognitive consciousness, they've got their own definition. The mind scientists will tell you, oh, this is what it means, and so on. But no one has an exact definition of this, and no one really agrees. But basically, cognitive means to will, intention, right? So notice this is very similar to the first column at the top, right? Here, you can see this part here, intention. Then in the second column, you see mano, Mano here is the sixth sense, the mind door. All right. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. The mind is called mano here, where all the senses operate. Now, since it is where the senses operate, we can call this, for convenience, cognitive consciousness. This is how we cognize things, how we experience things. Here again, the moment you talk about cognition, you're going to have a big debate, right? Because it's not well defined. But remember, here we're talking about the Buddhist idea, early Buddhist idea of consciousness. Oops. Okay, sorry, let me go back a bit. Okay, so here, consciousness refers to life continuum, Bhavanga, essential. Here, we are looking a bit more closely the function, one important function of consciousness as existential consciousness. It's what sustains our present existence, and which also kind of we are reborn again and again through this consciousness. This consciousness finds a footing, as the sutras like to say. All right, and that rebirth consciousness, or Bhavanga, they got many names, is here called the subconscious. So more or less, these are the key terms that I want to talk about in information on these three really difficult, tricky terms. So you find that even after what I've said here, you say, huh, what did you say? You know, all these things are really mind-boggling. But that's the whole beauty. The Buddha will give us all these teachings. Here, I'm just showing you the breadth and the depth of how these ideas can go. I don't expect you to understand all this at one time. You have to, this is to help you reflect, understand as you go along, studying the sutras to your own practice. So here you are. In summary, you can look at the three words again. Chitta is thought. It refers to the pre-conscious. Not everything, but it helps us to begin with, right? Mano refers to sixth sense base, and it is the unconscious. Viññāṇa is the consciousness in general. It includes the subconscious. This to help you by way of summary, all right? Now, what is mind? Let's go back and have a bit simplified idea. So we'll talk about the body, right? The body is called form in terms of the aggregates, and there are 4 elements, and the 4 elements are sustained by the food we take, right? So this is already mentioned. Mind comprises of feeling, 6 kinds of feeling depending on the senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, and they arise from contact. Contact means sense impression. Then there is perception, which are also 6 kinds depending on eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind. And they're also dependent on contact. When there is sense impression, there is sense stimulus. Perception arises. Then formations, how we create karma through the aggregates. Again, we can do this in 6 ways: to what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and think. When there is sense contact, when we experience something, that's meaning of contact. And then consciousness itself, again, there are 6 kinds depending on eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And this arises through name and form, because consciousness functions through the 6 senses. For example, through the eye sees something, but then consciousness says something like, oh, we got to make sense of this. What's this? All right. There's a cat, there's a dog, right? So you see something, you give a name to it. Then you look at an animal which is huge and big. It looks like a cat, but it barks. What is it? You have a problem. You got to just give a new name to this animal. Or you meet someone, okay? Someone comes along and it's very dark. You can't see the face. You know it's a person, right? So that is form. So what do you do next? You want to know the person's name. So who are you, right? So that's name. We want to have the name, otherwise we cannot connect with this person. And we do this on our Telegram channel. You know, you have people who give their name as A or some other, just one word. You know, So now I politely tell them and say, oh, okay, you can use your short form as a username, but we need to know your full names. We can interact with you and we can admit you to study suttas and dhamma with us. So we need to know people's names so that we also more or less have some idea of their intentions. So names are important. So here's the name and form going together, and our consciousness works in that way to know things, know people. Okay, so now how do we tame our mind? All right. So in other words, we're going to put into some practical use what we have learned so far. This is called the Bāhiya teaching, because it was given to the monk Bāhiya Daruchiriya. The Buddha gave this teaching to Bāhiya and also to Malunkyaputta, by the way. So the Buddha taught these two famous monks, and they became arahats, by the way. That's why these teachings are very famous. It's called Bāhiya teaching or Malunkyaputta teaching. Here, regarding things seen, heard, sense, and cognized, known or known, cognized can translate as known if you like. You can read as seen, sense, as seen, heard, sense, and known. You can translate it also if you like. So the Buddha is saying, in whatever is seen, heard, sense, or known, in the seen, there will only be the seen. In the heard, there will only be the heard. In the sense, there will only be the sense. In the cognized or in the known, there will only be the cognized or the known. This essentially is the famous so-called, in modern time, we call it the Vipassana teaching. This is the essence of it, right? Now look at these four words: sense, heard, seen, heard, sense, cognized. Why these four? This four is a shorthand or simplified abbreviation of the six senses. Seen, of course, action of the eye; heard, action of the ear; and then nose, tongue, body. Okay, nose, tongue, body is subsumed under sensed. Here, sense, the logic is that external stimulus impact on the sensitive surface. For example, in the case of smell molecules impact sensitive parts of the nose, so you can smell. In case of the ear, sound impact on sensitive parts of the ear, you get sound. And then the taste, you get taste molecules impact on the tongue, and you get taste. So even as early as the Buddha's time, we have this idea, right? So they combine these three senses into one for convenience. Instead of mentioning all the six, will be very long. So you just say sensed. And then cognized is the activity of the mind. Okay, so these are the four. So here, the Buddha says, whatever you experience, if you see something, note it as seeing. That is what we have been doing in meditation, which is seeing, okay? And what you hear is just sound, hearing. Don't add anything more to it. You get, when you say, I don't like it, then you're going to get angry. When you say, I like it, then you want to have more of it. So take it as it is. It comes, it goes, right? That's what doctors normally do, you know. You can tell them a lot of things. Sometimes husband and wife go, and the wife will tell the doctor more than the husband tells. The doctor listens, okay, and he doesn't really react to all this. He listens carefully, and then that's it. He notes down the things that's just heard, right? So in a way, these professionals, they follow this kind of interesting teaching which the Buddha gave. You just record the facts. That's one way of putting it. So in a sense, when we see, in what we see, there's only the seen, we're telling ourselves, what are the facts here? What are you looking at? That's it, you know, don't make it more or less, you see. So anyway, in the heard, there is only the heard, okay? So when you hear sound, don't make too much of a thing of it. Just say sound, all right? Of course, you hear something very peaceful, very nice, and you feel calm by it, that's fine. Okay, so just be calm, be peaceful. In other words, don't add your thoughts into it. And then in the sense, smell, taste, touch, again, you just let it be like that. Feel it like that. Now, cognize is a bit tricky. What you know, here it refers to thinking. When the thoughts come, especially emotions, make you happy or sad, just take them as they are. There's a special aspect of thinking called reasoning, where you have to really spend time and then connect things. But I find that in my sutta work, very often if I have difficulty with certain passages, I will just stop a while and then don't think about it. Then later I come back and then look at it again, and everything will fall into place. That's one way to act in this sense. Yeah? Now, I may have missed out something earlier where I talked about the sense. So sense, once again, refers to smell, taste, and touch. Okay, just in case I missed out that one. Okay, so here the Buddha continues. Right? Okay, so now the Buddha says, if you do this, if you only in the scene there is the seen, the heard, you only sound what you hear, and the sense only the sense, cognize as only thoughts, then you are not by that. Okay, here the Buddha is talking to an arahat or becoming an arahat. So it says if you are able to do this, you are an arahat. So you are no more by that. Now here in English sounds funny, but in Pali it's natena, okay? Natena, not by that. So this instrumental, you are no more the instrument of something else, okay? In other words, you're not affected by greed, hate, delusion, the three unwholesome roots. Okay, so the arahat is free from greed, hate, delusion. You are not influenced or shaped by that. That here refers to greed, hate, delusion. Here, that in Pali is tongue. So tongue instrumental is tena, you see. Now imagine the Buddha used the one little word tongue to represent all this samsaric suffering, And then there's a term, attam, not that. Attamaya, this is not mine. That is not mine, attam. And then you have attamayata. It's a very famous term in early Buddhism. There's a whole article on attamayata, talking about how to let go of the world mentally so that we are free from greed, hate, and delusion. Then, when you are not by that, when you overcome greed, hate, delusion, then you will not be daring. You will not be in there, meaning you are not caught up in that kind of situation. In what situation? The seen, the heard, the sense, and the cognize. You are no more defined by all these senses. You are free of them. When you are not therein, notice the cause effect, A, B, and then B, C. When you're not therein, you'll be neither here, nor beyond, nor in between. What does this mean? It means you won't be reborn. You won't be reborn here, or you won't be reborn in the heavens, or in between the intermediate states. Okay. Another interpretation is you cannot say there is a soul or some kind of essence in the seen, heard, sense, cognize, or what is not seen, not heard, not sensed, not cognized, or any idea in between, right? So basically the Buddha is cancelling out every possibility. There's no possibility of the self or the soul. This is itself the ending of suffering, so declares the Buddha. This is the famous Bāhiya Buddha teaching. You want to know more, you just read those two numbers there, SD 33.7 and SD 5.9. You get the Bāhiya teaching and the Bāhiya Buddha teaching. Right, so now we're nearing the end. So the Buddha now tells us by way of summary about bhikshus. When the Buddha says bhikshus, is addressing us, the audience. As regards to that which is called thought, citta, mind, mano, consciousness, viññāṇa, the three terms we have learned, The untutored worldling is unable to experience revulsion towards it, unable to become dispassionate towards it, and be freed from it. What is the reason for this? Because for a long time, this has been held, cherished, and grasped by him. Thus, this is mine, this I am, this is myself. All right? So all these things we experience through the mind, Chitta, mano, and viññāṇa, we try to own it. This is mine. Okay? This is due to craving. And we say, oh, I am this. I am my body, right? So I don't want to wear masks, or I don't want to be vaccinated, whatever. This is my body. I am this body, right? So I am this body is caused by conceit. Conceit means measuring yourself against others. This is myself is caused by views, especially wrong views. Right? So these are the three sub-views, no? Which are all overcome by the Arhat. As streamliness, we understand, but we're still caught up with some ideas. Only the Arhats able to overcome all these three self-views. So there you are. We come near the conclusion. We're talking about the mind. So we have to understand the mind. You know, in order to understand the mind, we have to use it. So your mind, use it or lose it. If you let someone else control your mind, then you have handed over the remote to that person, you're in serious trouble. This person will use it like a puppet, right? So your mind, you have to use it yourself, or you will lose it. So how do we use our mind? How do we stay healthy mentally? By making friends, by communicating socially in a positive way. Of course, not just holding hands. You know, you be friendly with people, listening to them, deep listening, be kind to them, interacting, showing compassion, in other words. Then, of course, you must care for yourself. You must do your, I mean, as we grow older, we can't exercise so much like before. Of course, while you're young, it's really good to exercise, have a nice body. But as you know, all those nice body, you have to maintain them really tediously. And after that, you start putting on weight again as you age past 30, past 40, right? So you have to start meditating when you, the younger you start, the better. So this is mental exercise. You've got to keep your mind healthy. And even as we age, we need to keep the body healthy, and doing something like yoga or the exercises that you're used to, that you find helpful, right? So they are body and mind, healthy body, healthy mind, and also healthy socially. This is what the teaching of the mind is about. So there you are. We come to the end of today's talk. Now we are ready for questions and answers.
Okay, thank you, Piya. Could you please stop sharing?
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, here we are.
Hello, everyone. Please turn on your videos for Q&A. Now we have a few questions in the chat box. I would like to request those who have question, who already typed the question in the chat box, to unmute yourself, following the sequence that the question come in. First of all, we have Diane. Diane, could you please unmute yourself and ask a question?
Hi, Brother Piya, Sister Ratna. I typed in 2 questions in the chat box. I think the first one I'd like to ask is about mano. In the 7a table, mano is described as the unconscious mind, but on the iceberg slide, if I remember correctly, it was quite high up. It describes the speech and actions level. So is that one of those kind of flexible, not so technical definitions? Or
yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very true. Mano is that part of our mind which is reactive and habitual. In a sense, we have no control. And it's rooted in the unconscious. But very often when we go out, this mano is the one that takes over, see? But then when we really take charge, say, okay, let me restrain myself, then we call it chitta. So that is the main difference. Yeah, it is quite tricky, you know, when you want to sit down and say, okay, how do I sort out all this terminology so that they don't overlap? And I find it's actually impossible, because I'm trying to highlight the key ideas. That is what I'm trying to do. So I don't think I get 100% marks here. I'll be very lucky if it's 90%, okay? So the important thing is, if you can have an idea, okay, this roughly was Chitta, and here's Mano in the background trying to make us do things, and here's Chitta holding us back, you know? And then consciousness is everything that's going on. Yeah, something like that, okay? And as you study the suttas, you will see the Buddha using all these terms, and then it become more interesting. Remember, you study Buddhism not to know the difference between Chitta, Mano, and Viññāṇa. You know, I mean, you may be a scholar, you do a PhD on that, you get your degree, and then you have a comfortable life because lots of money. That's fine, but it's not going to bring you a good rebirth. You see, the purpose of Buddhism is to use these terms so that you understand yourself better. You know how this mind works, and then you're free from its negative aspects. You refine the way your mind works. Okay. So that's what I mean by the teachings of early Buddhism are often non-technical. I say often because there are certain terms which can be fixed in ideas. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Diane, you have another question, please?
The question was just there's this famous saying, "I think, therefore I am," which is kind of accurate in a sense, because that's what kind of happens. But from a Buddhist perspective, can you more accurately represent it as thinking arises, and therefore the idea of being arises?
Have you read any books on philosophy or interest in philosophy at all?
Interest, yes. Actual study, not really.
Have you ever read about René Descartes?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's the one who made this famous statement. But you also know that a lot of modern philosophers have debunked him. They have proven that he is wrong, actually. So you get this thing going on in the history of philosophy, you know. The next generation will debunk the older generation, and then someone will bring it back, and so on. Otherwise, they run out of relevance, you see. So, okay, here we're going a little bit philosophical. I don't want to go too technical. I've written something about this, or rather, I've quoted scholars who have done research about this. If you really want to know more, I'll try to look up the materials. You got to message me to Telegram. I will send those materials to you. Now, when Descartes, this French philosopher, he's very famous. He's said to be father of Western philosophy. His argument is, I think, therefore I exist. He wrote in Latin, I think, and he'll translate it into French. I think, therefore I exist. So it's a bit like what I was trying to explain when we started the talk. I said, okay, we know we have a body, you know, and then we know that therefore we have a mind, but I didn't say self, I just say mind, you see. But because he was brought up in a very strong Catholic country, right? So they always have this idea of soul. They're always trying to prove God. Even Newton, he brought up all these scientific theories. In the end, he was trying to prove that God exists. So he was trying to prove there's a soul, therefore there's a God, you know, and so on. But the thing is, this is just reasoning, argumentation, doesn't mean it is right. For example, I can say there is unicorn, you know, there are unicorns, and unicorns, they are beautiful white horses, they have horns on their head. I can give the most beautiful description and definition of a unicorn. It doesn't mean it exists. Just because we define it, just because we reason it, doesn't mean it exists. Okay? So that's one simple way we can say it's just an argumentation, but it's not necessarily be true. Okay. Like I said, this is very speculative and philosophical. I will send you the details of the interesting discussion if you want. Okay. Okay. Next.
Okay, thank you, Piya. Next is JH Cole. Please unmute yourself and ask question. Thank you.
Actually, my question is the same as Diana's just now. It happens that the discrepancies between the iceberg and the table. So it's actually been answered. Okay. Thank you.
I'm happy you observe it. Maybe I have to think about it again and then see, make some adjustments. No? All right. So sometimes I'm wrong. So don't think that I'm right all the time. I mean, I don't know. You can argue this thing out, but it's good to refine. It took me years, 50 years to really understand these three terms. And I don't think I could talk about all this so much as I did today, say 5 years ago. I wouldn't know what I'm talking about. Okay.
I remember, Brother Piya, there is some terminologies like Chakku viññāṇa. So does that viññāṇa refers to eye consciousness?
Yeah, correct. Chakku viññāṇa is eye consciousness.
So it's the same as your so-called the third category of the mind?
Yeah, same.
Oh.
Yeah, so you have Chakku viññāṇa, eye consciousness, and then the mano viññāṇa is the mind consciousness. Then you have all the Pali words for eye, ear, nose, tongue.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Next, Sister Gexiu, please unmute yourself.
Just one more point, interesting point. You see, in Pali, we say Chakku viññāṇa, okay? Eye consciousness. But this Chakku, in other words, is the eye faculty. But the eyeball, when we say eye in English, we can mean eyeball. We also can mean, we don't think very often of the functioning eye. But in Pali, the functioning eye, the idea of functioning eye is very important. Because the word for eye as functioning faculty is Chakku. But the word for eye as eyeball is Akhi, okay? Or Akshi in Sanskrit. So we do have these two words, but you rarely see Akhi in Pali, because Akhi is just the eyeball, and it has no use for not much use in the Buddha's teaching anyway. The eyeball, which is like an organ by itself, you see, unless you're a doctor, I suppose. Okay, yes, Gexiu. Yes, go on. Sorry.
Unmute yourself, please. Unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you, Brother Piya and Sister Ratna, for the very interesting summary. I actually have a few questions and comments. I'll start with the definition of mind, mental activity in the Mahavijaya Sutta. And I would appreciate your comments on, the different definition as in the Vibhanga Sutta, where the definition of Nama was actually feeling, perception, volition, contact, and attention, which I was just wondering why it was put that way. But then I realized when you put your slides on number 8 slide, where you talk about the last column, conditions, the other 4 aggregates, you put condition by contact, so that's inclusive in that, I suppose.
Yes.
The attention part, because that is actually not very much emphasized, but I know it's important because attention is mana, saṅkhāra. But I just would like to hear your opinion on these two different suttas on the definition of nama.
Which Vibhanga Sutta is that?
Vibhanga Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 12.2, where I think they asked about what is actually nama and rupa, and then under nama it was mentioned. And then
the first sutta?
Mahavijaya Sutta, which you...
Oh, Mahavijaya, okay. The nun and the husband. Huh? Okay, I think the nama in this case is another word for the functioning aspects of the mind. Nama refers to functioning aspects of the mind. What are those things that work when the mind is working, recognizing something? So you have all those terms mentioned, including attention. You see? So it is taken in a broad sense in the context of that sutta. This is why I say there is what I introduce what's called the rule of contextuality, or the principle of contextuality. Very important. Sometimes you find scholars, they say, oh, the Buddha should have said this, maybe the sutta reciters got it wrong. There's no such thing. I have never found in the sutta where the reciters made a mistake or the Buddha made a mistake, because these are all very carefully composed texts. So the rule of contextuality means you got to ask yourself, what is the sutta saying here? What is the context? What does nama mean here? So you look at the whole teaching and the commentary also, and this will be explained. So in the suttas you have mentioned, especially Vibhanga means analysis. You see. Once you Vibhanga, they're going to tell you a lot of things about one small word, you see. So you see Nama explained to you with different functions. So you got to see those functions in a connection of the teaching that the Buddha is giving, or whoever the Arhat is giving the teaching. What is he trying to teach us, right? So in that sense, it has a special functional, what they call that, collection of terms. Yeah, I can only give this very general terms because I've got to read the sutta carefully and then show the word by word compare. Otherwise, it's a bit difficult, very technical here. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So that Vibhanga Sutta is actually analysis of dependent origination. So I guess, like you mentioned, if you look at it contextually, because if you take it out and then like the Abhidhamma model, and you're talking about this contact and attention is actually under Chitta.
Correct.
And is under saṅkhāra already. Yeah.
And if you bring in Abhidhamma, you're gonna have more problems.
Very confusing. That's like overlapping all.
Yeah. So that is why you must be careful not to stretch the connection too far. Yeah? You got to see in this connection, in this sutta, what is the Buddha talking about? You got to imagine, you see, the Buddha taught for 45 years, So let's say first 10 years, he gave this very simple approach because the people all very new, and then he didn't define terms very carefully. Then later, as people know, they start asking questions, very, very detailed, very refined questions. Then you find he starts adding in more refined subsets and so on. So you can see that kind of development over time. In fact, occasionally you see in my translation, I use what is called like an evolutionary table, to show how the 3 aggregates evolve into the 5 hindrances, into the 10 fetters and so on. And it's very fascinating to see how the ideas grew. So for 45 years, the Buddha's teaching, in a sense, grew theoretically. The awakening is there. It's just how he spoke it out, And the 45 years, we're very lucky because, in 45 years, you can do a lot. So he gave us this really amazing different dimensions of looking at those terms. And this is what we need to study. And study, remember the rule of context. Don't stretch the context too thinly. Then you find it doesn't make sense, okay? All right, next question.
Yeah, so the other point, sorry if I may continue to ask because I got
it's okay, no problem.
Yeah. So regarding Chitta, because I follow quite a bit in forest tradition. So so they don't stress so much about theory. So they always talk about practice, and they say you rely on your Chitta. But from your explanation, the different the differences and the analysis, it just sounds like the Chitta, the knower, is what they meant as well. I mean, the base of all knowing, right?
Yes.
From the forest tradition, because they say always rely to your Chitta. Yeah, and that would also kind of tie up with what Diane was asking about. I think, therefore I know. Right? It would be more like because there's another teacher who also commented on Descartes' quote. He said that it should be I feel, therefore I. The brain that we always see is thinking, and the feeling, the knowing.
Then you create another problem.
So that's the other perspective.
Some of philosophers will get together and say, "Hey, let's try to debunk this view." Now, I mean, what you said about Chitta is very interesting. You find the forest monks, the practitioners, they always say, "Cultivate Chitta." They never say cultivate mano, is it?
Yeah.
So that's why I have confidence. I say, okay, yeah, this is interesting because Chitta is the positive aspect here, which is which can be cultivated.
Yeah.
See? Yeah.
Just to, I mean, if you may allow, I think I've come across Ayatma Chitta having a summary of all these three. I think he based his summary on this Johansson's psychosemantic investigation of these three.
Okay.
If you're interested, I can just share it on the Telegram of that table.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah,
That's
because
quite interesting as well.
there are a couple of scholars who have written some very interesting articles on the three terms. Yeah, but I've not heard about. I may have missed Johansson's article. Anyway, yeah, please post it. Okay, thank you.
And the last comment,
Yeah.
I was attracted by the term you used, karmic genes. Okay. I mean, being a geneticist, I'm interested as well. But I know there is this new non-conventional, this is non-mainstream about waste genetics. I think it's something possibly, potential in developing because, as like all mainstream science, people do not go into that. But, studying Buddhism, it kind of ties up because waste genetics is all about quantum genetics. And we know quantum physics, now they're talking about, energy and karmic, which is actually possibly, inherited. But people now find that. So I find that
science and Buddhism getting closer and closer.
Yeah, waste genetics. If you're interested, you can Google that.
Well, you can call meditation psychogenetics if you like. I mean, genetics also has a sense of growing something in a, of course, in a Buddhist sense, a positive way. So when you say psychogenetic, you're talking about growing the mind, cultivating the mind. Anyway, these are just big words. Important thing is you practice. Okay, next question.
Okay,
Anymore?
thank you. Yeah, Arthur is waiting. Arthur,
Okay,
please
Arthur,
unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I just want to say thank you for having the class at this time. It's easier for me to be focused.
Okay.
I have many questions, but I'll just maybe have time for one. I found it very interesting when you mentioned the disjunctive and conjunctive prefixes of saññā and viññāṇa.
Okay.
And in the table 3 words for mind, under viññāṇa, it said constructive experience, which makes intuitive sense to me. So I'm wondering, where does the disjunctive aspect of V come into viññāṇa?
Okay, viññāṇa, as I said, when you get up in the morning, you ask yourself, am I dreaming or am I awake? First thing you ask, right? So you have to decide which of the senses. So that deciding is disjunctive. You have to choose, analytical. You have to decide which of the senses. So consciousness works like that. Consciousness breaks up the different parts and then it chooses, okay, this is the one. Another big word is particularizing. Particularizing is a particularizing kind of consciousness. So it's disjunctive in the sense that it analyzes. This is thinking, and then thinking, you have this, so it analyzes. Whereas saññā, perception, tends to put together things. It recognizes things from the past. So that's the meaning, that's conjunctive in that sense. Disjunctive is separates things so that it makes sense. Analytical, okay? The other one is synthetical, put things together. That is saññā, synthetical. So syn, S-Y-N is, I think, a Greek prefix for com, I think. Com, I think, is Latin. Okay. So you can ask a bit more question because we will allow to go up to 11:15 if no one disagrees, And so you have any other questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of a personal question that came up from one of the suttas quoted, where the Buddha says we should have revulsion towards citta, mano, and viññāṇa.
Oh yeah.
Maybe because I'm a layperson, I find it very hard to balance that idea with right livelihood, because like when I try to work with my mind and my mind works well, I get very happy and I get very attached.
Okay.
And when I become dispassionate towards my mind, it's hard for me to work effectively.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have any practical advice.
Yes, I'm happy you asked that question because I in my mind I tell myself, oh, I got to say something about this. Because I was talking so fast, I forgot about that thought. That's one interesting thing. I could recall that because you asked the question, and that's how our mind works. We may not know it at that time, but by looking back, you say, oops, yeah, I wanted to say this, but I didn't. So you see, the mind is a way of, recording itself and knowing itself. Now, this word revulsion, nibbida, is a very powerful word. The meaning is this: it's a kind of renunciation. in the ultimate sense. You know fire really burns, you will never put your hand into it. That's revulsion. That's the essence of revulsion. Of course, there are other scatological ideas which some of the more open teachers use. For example, Achancha was recorded as saying, what's wrong with translating nibbida as repulsion? Because someone said, oh, you know, it's a very strong word. Why can't you use like what gentler words, like dissolution, you know, and so on. He says, well, you know, if something is shit, it smells just as bad. No matter what name you call it, dung smells just as bad. So you don't have to give a nice name to it. He was very direct. That's a great thing people love about him. Okay, so the point is this mind, as citta, mano, and viññāṇa, they ultimately bring us suffering. So we look at it knowing that these are, yes, useful things, but do not get caught up with them. That's the idea of revulsion here. It doesn't mean hate. It means when you know really how they work, that will be your response. You will say, oh, I know, I'm not going to get caught with this. Okay, so the arahats know this. That's the meaning. If you're not arahat yet, no problem. You know, it's okay for you to love the mind, but you don't get carried away by it. That's fine. Yes, the idea of happiness is very important. I mean, if I don't feel happy and joyful with the work I'm doing, I wouldn't be doing it for the last 20 years, you know. For example, now I'm so happy we're ending our talk because I can get back to working on my latest 59.10, you see. So there is this sense of, when you have joy, you have this energy that, you know, pushing you ahead and guiding you and making you wanting to make sure your work is good. You're not just doing it because, oh, here's another sutta, I got to do this. It's not like that. You say, what is this sutta telling me? And you feel joyful about it. And one of the things I discover is every time I have a new sutta, I say, oh, this is a short and simple sutta. I'm not sure what I can say, if I can say anything about it at all. And then after 1 or 2 days, I say, oh my goodness, there's so many connected suttas. And I have to decide to put them all in. How am I going to put them all in, and how am I going to connect them? For example, in ST 59.9, you see I have found 10 suttas, all interconnected. So I put all the 10 into that sutta and show how they are interconnected. And so you discover this kind of amazing things that the suttas are giving us, you see. So you're missing all this if you don't study the suttas. Now, I'm not saying you should go straight into that, it can be quite difficult also, but you start gradually and you find as you deepen your understanding of the suttas, you discover it's not just text. There are other amazing things, how the Buddha presents the text in terms of psychology, in terms of literature, and so on. So the more you are trained in language, and in literature, the more you begin to see these finer points in how the Buddha and the early monks recorded the teachings. Okay. All right. So, right. Any other questions?
Anyone else has any question? If not, we end today's session.
You want to take a photo first?
Already taken.
Okay. Good. All right. So. Now let me close now.
Yeah. Today we have to dedicate marriage.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now before that, so remember we are ending our sutta series. So if you have any sutta in mind or topic in mind, please let us know so that we can prepare for next year's series. I think probably I won't work out a kind of strict syllabus for next year's series. Maybe I'll plan for 2-3 months, you know, and then see what sutta is interesting next. So that every 2 weeks, every fortnight, we can have sutta to, you know, so we meet and study suttas, all right? Okay, let us close now. Once again, we have spent some time renouncing the world, so to speak. We have gathered here in search of ourselves, to know ourselves better through the Dhamma. We have recited the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. We have done some meditation and also listen to the Dhamma, ask questions and so on. And these are wonderful good actions, good karma. By all this good karma, may we be well, may we be happy, may you be well, may you be happy. Send your kind thoughts to people who matter to you. This is a very good and very strategic time to do that. Especially people you have great difficulties with, is the time, send your kind thoughts to them, wishing them well and happy. And today I would like to especially dedicate all these wonderful merits for the benefit of our late friend who has been with us, one of our supporters, Sister Sri Kandi Punama, also known as Bun Yen Yen, who passed away on 19th of October, Tuesday. And the funeral was on the 23rd of October. That was yesterday. No? So she has been really a wonderful person. Her passing was quite a shock to us, quite sudden actually. But that's the nature of things. So we dedicate this merits of today's study, especially for her. Sister Yen Yen, wherever you are, may you be well and happy. May you be at peace with yourself. And now to show our gratitude to the 3 jewels, let us together bow down to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava, Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Bow down. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, Dhammang Namasami. Bow down. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho, Sanghang Namami. Bow down. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you, Brother Piya, Sister Ratna, and everyone.